So why don't you, just before we get into the thick of it, give us your pronouns, introduce yourself, a soundbite of who you are.
You know what? I would love your help with my pronouns.
Yes.
How do I announce them?
If you want to be referred to as they as opposed to him or her, you can be like, my pronouns are they, there.
Ola Ince. Preferred pronouns, she and her. A bit about me.
Go ahead.
Let's do like bullet points.
Boom.
I am a director. I am a theatre director and a freelance theatre director at that. I have trained as a director. I went to a drama school called Rose Bruford and did a directing degree for 3 years. I have been associate director on shows like Tina Turner the Musical. I was actually international associate director, which was really fun because you get to go on an aeroplane a lot. I am an associate director at the Royal Court, which means I get to help with programming, read loads of plays, build relationships with people via the theatre, and that's great. I love stories. That's it. So I knew I wanted to be a theatre director when I was about 15, and now I've realised over time that it's not necessarily just theatre that I want to direct. So I'd love to direct a cartoon. That's on my to-do list. I'd love to direct a radio play. I've done it before, but more. I'd love to direct films. I did my first ever short film during lockdown. Amazing. It's called Viral by James Graham. So yeah, I like stories and I like helping people tell them. And I like helping people hear them. So my job's cool because I get to do the two things at once.
One being a female director, one being a Black director. What kind of dynamics do you find stepping into those spaces where you're probably surrounded by a more homogenous group of people who are traditionally reflective of this white, straight thing that you would normally find in the management area of theatre?
There's a lot of things to juggle. There's being a woman, there's being a young woman, and there's being a young Black woman. There's also class in there too.
Yeah.
Because traditionally it's a very white, male, Oxbridge industry.
Yeah. I love that. So Oxbridge. I need to start using that. I'm starting to use that all the time now. Keep going.
And that in itself is the polar opposite of me, which can be really intimidating as a director starting out, that you're everything that they are not. But actually it can really be a strength because as you were speaking about what it means for you to have an identity as a dancer and how important that is that people understand what you can bring, that is the same for me too, that people understand where I come from and therefore what I may be able to impart on a story, on an audience, on a group of actors. But that takes some time to learn that and confidence to be happy about being different, because I guess survival usually is about assimilating, and you can't really do that if you are so different. My professional career started when I was 20.
Right.
And I really was hungry to start making work in professional spaces. And so I wanted to employ professional actors. And to do that, you have to be able to negotiate and start conversations with their agents. And their agents really want to understand who you are so they can entrust their client with you.
Yeah.
So it was really hard to convince agents that their actors should work with a 20-year-old, fresh out of drama school, Black female director. Because also I look really young. So when I was 20, I probably looked like I was 12.
Yeah.
That was the challenge, but a challenge that I rose to. And that meant that I did stuff like built a website so that agents could Google me and see what I was about. And initially, I didn't have a body of work, so it was mostly about the kind of work I wanted to make. And then it was about how I presented myself. So I had to really fight my youth and make sure that I was wearing clothes that seemed of an age, of maturity, of a certain stature. And actually, I knew enough to lead a room. And I was really clear about what I wanted from the room. And so I always went into rooms spelling out what I expected, expecting respect because I gave lots of respect too. And people really quickly understand what kind of leader you are, and they move with you. When I worked in places like out of London sometimes, people would really innocently, and maybe if I was differently inclined, I'd be sensitive to it. And obviously it did really have an effect on me, because I still remember it. I remember this older white guy asking me, like, oh, how come you're a director? You're black. You're a young black girl.
Oh
like,
my God.
what made you want to be a director? Like, how, why, what, where?
Wow.
And I remember kind of going like, oh, I didn't realize I was so other to you, that you saw me in that way. But also that you recognize that I'm so underrepresented.
Yeah.
So that happens too. A lot of the plays I direct are about race or inequality, or power imbalance. And so sometimes if I'm casting someone who is an oppressor, they can find it really difficult to want to play that role. And they sometimes feel like worry that I think that they really are that oppressor. So there's a really weird friction that can occur that I don't think would occur if I was a white man, because people wouldn't assume my politics. In some cases have meant I've had to reassure people that I'm not judging them, which I wouldn't have to if I was of a different race.
Sometimes people look at white people in leadership positions as kind of like PH7, if that makes sense. It's like
neutral.
There's no label affixed to them. They're just a person.
Yeah.
And it's the minute you go to, acidic or basic, it's like all of a sudden there are, like you're saying, social etiquette that comes into play, because you think you need to navigate those communications in a certain way.
I've had someone of color tell me that I'm, it's really unfair that we are doing so well, because we're only doing well because we're tokens. And I was like, maybe that's your story, honey, but I'm actually good at this. That was really sad to hear someone say that. Yeah. And I think a lot of people may believe that, but I know that actually a lot of opportunities that I've got, it's taken me much longer to get them, because I've had to overprove that I was worth that slot.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I really have had to overprove. And this is not me blowing my own horn, but it's me going, I could have achieved a lot earlier if institutions and people didn't have those biases.
Yeah, completely.
But they always will go with the person that they think will guarantee them success. And success also equates to money. And they think, this is tried and tested.
Yeah.
This PH7 person, we're going to go, hey, you're a risk. But why am I a risk?
This is the thing, is like, you're not. But it's just the stigmas that society has like constantly ingrained into us. A quite reputable school of musical theater, or theater in general, reached out to me and they said, oh, we're interested in perhaps interviewing you to be the choreographer of our show, because right now we have an all white male creative team. The show was once on this island, and they said, we want somebody who's ethnic and ideally female, because right now we have an all white creative team. We want to diversify a little bit. So many things that I was thinking about. One, just because I'm ethnic does not mean I'm going to represent the ethnicities that are celebrated in Once on This Island. I was like, I can do it, but I would have to do a lot of research into like what I would think, the type of movement that I think would serve the show. Tribal dancing, Afro-Caribbean movement. I was like, these are not things that I have trained in, so I cannot speak that movement from a genuine place. It would be all researched. So I was like, okay, I was like, cool. I was like, great that you want an ethnic person, but if you're choosing ethnicity because of the show, I think you need to rethink the people that you're hiring. Then the whole female situation in the midst of an all-white male creative team, is this affirmative action? And then I was like, is affirmative action ethical? This is like a whole nother podcast, but is it like, because is it a good thing actually that they were like, no, we want an ethnic female to be the choreographer? I'm just going to tell you now, they ended up going with a white male who I really like. He's a friend of mine. I'm just like, so what was all of that? Have you ever felt like you have been chosen as the director for a production because it's like ticking some nice boxes?
Yes, but I haven't always said yes.
Okay.
Like, I spent a lot of my career saying no to certain people's frustration. I've chosen not to affiliate myself with certain groups and productions, because I'm like, that's not me.
Yeah.
It's not representative of my experiences. And I feel like you are trying to curate my career in a way that I don't have control over, and it's just not to know. I'll say no. Sometimes I'm aware that people want me to represent or a group, or help them do some research for a group, or help them authenticate something because they aren't of the right demographic to really represent. But I still always make sure that I feel like I have a relationship with that production. So I won't just say yes because shows like Tina, you can be a young person from London and see yourself on stage and be inspired. It can change your whole life. I don't mean you want to become a performer, but you go, oh, I can have a voice.
Yeah.
Or, oh yeah, look, oh, I could be powerful. Oh, I can be creative.
Yeah.
Oh, I can have this kind of relationship with a man, a woman, or whatever are they. Like, you really, it does open and expand the world in which you imagine, but you can't do that if you can't see the show.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, if you can't even come see the show, you'll never realize any of that potential. Moving forward, like, what do you think is one or like two tactics that you could implement to make sure that, one, you champion your diversity and that you don't feel like you need to assimilate, because to assimilate is to like play the game. It's like, well, if I'm going to get into those spaces, I'm going to cater to and not comment on any discrimination because I'm in the room now.
I think there's loads of things to say. One is you need to surround yourself with people that love you and champion you, because you're not always going to have that love in your working environment. You're going to need to go home and heal, to be brave, because you're going to go on, basically you're on the front line. I'd say you need to really think about who you are. And that's hard, it takes time. I still try and do it every day, is like really understand who I am. But that means, you know, what kind of stories do you like? What kind of things do you like? What do you dislike? That will help you understand the kind of stories you want to make. That will help you understand who you are, so that you don't try and replicate who other people are. And it doesn't mean you have to go like, oh, okay, I am half Japanese, I'm half, I don't know, Ghanaian, so I want to tell stories about these people. And like, that's not it at all. You don't have to be bound by your cultural identity. It's really about like what you've lived through, what fascinates you, what you want to challenge is the stories that you're gonna, and the ideas you're going to present to a group. And that's how you don't assimilate, because you really just interrogate yourself.
Yes.
So know who you are, so you know what you want to offer. Also have an amazing support network, so that you can be really brave and fight many fights and wars and go to battle, but then come home and be soothed. Know that it's not always your job to fight as well. You can take things to HR, or you can challenge things without having to be on a soapbox. And it's not your job to police everyone and everything. If you feel like you can, then go for it, but you don't have to be a warrior every day. That's exhausting. Because we want you to be strong and refreshed and inspired to make the work. Have love, and then give yourself space to know what you want to make and say, because that will just mean it's unique to you. And actually remember that it's a very competitive industry, so the last thing you want to be is like someone else, because if you're the same as Tom, then why should anyone pick you?
Exactly.
I think that's it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Just friggin' nuggets of gold right there, guys.